Good evening and welcome once again to Plain Talk. As I indicated to you last Wednesday, we were going to have the other side of the parking meter arguments. As you know, a couple of weeks ago, I had persons from the group that essentially oppose the parking meters. You know the grounds under which they oppose them. For one, the cost was too high. Secondly, the contract was unlawful. Third, that the attempt to impose the charges was also unlawful. And fourthly, that perhaps the range and the consultation that had been taking place was not adequate. Well, this evening, we thought, in the interest of balance, we'll hear the other side of the discussion. I'll introduce my guests. The immediate on my left is Mr. Amir Oren, who is the Business Development Director of Smart City Solutions, the company that has the contract for the installation and operation of the parking meters. Mr. Royston King, the town clerk, who is not part of Smart City Solutions. He's representing the City Council and surely no stranger to the public in Guyana over the past year or so. Mr. Kit Nascimento, Public Communications Consultant to Smart City Solutions. And to my extreme left is Mr. John Daniels, a Director of Operations of Smart City Solutions. Gentlemen, welcome to Plain Talk.
Thank you for having us.
Mr. Oren, thank you. Welcome to Guyana. Welcome to this program. It's the first time I'm having you. It appears to me, a citizen, a member of the public, that matters have been moving rather rapidly over the past few weeks. Yesterday, we had an initial rate had been set. I think it was $125 per 15 minutes. It came down to $50 per 15 minutes. And then yesterday's newspapers reported the mayor, Mayor Patricia Chase Grain, are saying the rates have been slashed. Now, tell us what the current position is, and is the mayor in fact speaking on behalf of the company in this regard? Anybody can start.
Well, I'm sorry. First of all, Kit, let me thank you, Chris. Let me thank you very much for inviting us on your program. It's a really good program, and it gives us a chance to explain to the public some of the things that have been happening with respect to the parking meter initiative. The Smart Cities Solutions, Inc. is really a partner with the Mayor and City Council, and in fact has been given a concession by the council to go ahead and to install parking meters in particular areas agreed to by the council, and to work this concession. Whenever the mayor speaks on a particular matter as it relates to this particular initiative, she would have had discussions with our partners, and therefore when she speaks understanding that there is an agreement between the council and our partners, Smart City Solution. So in that sense, she is speaking to the initiative, and yes, she is speaking not on behalf of Smart City Solution, but she's speaking as the chairman of the authority that has given Smart City Solution the concession to go forward with this initiative.
Okay. Mr. Oren, I don't know if you wish to add to that.
Yeah, I'll try to address particularly your question of the rates, right? You're absolutely right. When the contract was first introduced, there was this, and maybe it's easier to speak with hours, right? So
Sure.
$500 an hour coming down to 200, and now talk about reducing it further. Now, perhaps it looks interesting for that to have occurred, but there are reasons for it. So when we came into the contract, okay, there was no feasibility study done. So we didn't know what type of form the project would take on. We didn't know if it was going to be 100 spaces on one street, 1,000 spaces, 10,000 spaces. We didn't know if it was going to be, what the best solution would be to have certain tariffs in certain zones versus other tariffs in other zones. So because there was no feasibility study done, and because we were entering into the contract, if we're going to enter into a contract and we're going to commit to perform, we have to know that the contract itself will be flexible enough for us to indeed perform when the time comes for performance. Now, the city itself didn't have the capacity to undertake this feasibility study. Us, on the other hand, before we would be inclined to enter into a contractual obligation, we would have had to have flexible rates before we would commit to the resources, both financial, human, etc., to undertake this feasibility study. So it would be two choices. Either the city would have done a feasibility study, in which case we would know what the rates should be, based on our expertise, or the contract would have to be flexible, and then we would be willing to conduct the feasibility study. So that explains the rates that you had in the very beginning, where it was $500 an hour. But it was always up to that amount. It was never fixed at that amount. And even the reports that you would have seen from the Ministry of Finance and from the Attorney General's office pointed out that there was flexibility in those original rates. So that's where we started, right? Then, after we had committed to the contract, after we had conducted our feasibility study with our own resources, we came to the conclusion that the right rates to be on a flat level would have been $200 an hour or $50 per 15 minutes where they stand now. That said, we knew that Guyana was a country and Georgetown was a city where there was no culture of paid parking. Mm-hmm. So we knew that we would have to work with certain people to acclimate them over time and gradually to this type of notion that even though you had these city streets which were congested with people who were parking for 7-8 hours at a time, which is not really what city streets are meant to be, right?
All right. Because we want to get as many people in and to get as many questions.
Right, but
my concern about the $500, no indication had been given that, look, that's a provisional number, provisional rate when it was announced. So the perception, how do you address the perception that, look, these people, when they came in at $500, when the company Smart City Solutions came in at $500, it was tantamount to price gouging.
Right.
How do you respond to that?
So I respond to the fact that we tried to communicate from the very beginning that it was, and if anyone read, now that you have the contract, but in any event, the numbers were out there, and it was quoted from the contract that it was up to those amounts, okay? And we spent some time, the very answer I just gave you I had given before. I'd given as early as August, September timeframe, okay? And we had explained why it was the numbers where they were. And
so what's
in
the rate
addition
now?
to that,
What's the rate now?
the rate now that people had been paying since we launched from January 9th has been $50 per 15 minutes. However, where I was going with this was trying to say to you that during the time before we launched, between August and January, we had a number of consultations with businesses. And businesses had asked for this discounts that they would have liked to provide for their employees and some other concessions and considerations that they had pointed out were very much necessary in Georgetown, which we can get into, but we had always planned for them. So whereas now you're hearing about us reducing the rates further, and what the mayor has announced this past week, this is something that we were offering to businesses, to dozens of businesses, for their employees, for those particular people who have this problem, who park for all day long. because these are city streets and many people need to share these streets. Businesses, restaurants, offices, etc. And people need to be able to find parking to shop, to go into a store to shop for an hour or two, and then some people need to be able to park for 8 hours a day, as they're doing right now. And you can only gradually make that change. So
Let me-
therefore, yes.
Go on. But let me bring in Royston again. You're in a position, the City Council is in a position where is both a partner in this project, but also a representative of the overall body of stakeholders in the city.
Yes.
Do you believe, Town Clerk, that you had done a sufficient level of consultation with the residents of the city of Georgetown? For example, the schools. Did you talk to these people who recognize, look, our interests have not been looked after, and therefore it brought out this widespread opposition to the whole project?
When we started discussing this project in 1995, we had wide consultations with a number of our stakeholders, Chris. But because we're dealing with an initiative that would actually would cause a cultural shift in Georgetown, that you can never do enough consultation. And consultation for us must always be ongoing. And we knew, even though we did consultations with community leaders, with the private sector, commission members of the private sector, and so on, we know that once we install the meters, once we begin rolling out the project, that we will have to make certain adjustments. So we believe that we did consultation, but we believe that we could have done more consultation, and we will have this. This is an ongoing process. Consultations, it is an ongoing process.
There is the problem that has been identified. That look, there has been a lack of transparency. There has been a lack of legality because there is clearly a requirement. The City Council is a public body that is subject to the Procurement Act. There has been a violation. How do you respond to that?
The City Council, I have the 2801 here, Municipal District Councils Act, Chapter 2801, by which the council is governed. The City Council is a body politic corporate. We have our own laws, regulations, and in fact our own constitution. Our procurement regulation does not oblige us to go public tender for such a project.
I
Therefore,
don't agree with
and
you
therefore
at all.
there was
But
no-
I wouldn't want to disagree.
And
But
they-
I'm telling you, Section 24 of the Procurement Act does say. So you remember 2801, of course, preceded the procurement law by decades.
Absolutely, but I'm
So-
but I'm
so
saying
that came in.
I'm saying to you, Kit, and we had legal advice on this. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm mixing
That's
Chris
all right, that's
and
all right.
Kit up. We have
He's
legal,
offended, not
Yeah,
me.
we have legal advice on this that we are not obliged under our procurement arrangement to go public tender for such a project.
Well, let
And
me
I want
ask
to be
you
very
this.
strong on it.
Let me ask you.
We have our own regulations, we have our own laws, we have a council that is the statutory body, we have a finance committee that is the statutory body, we have an audit committee, we have our own regulations and laws, and we work by this. I tell you this, if you go back in years, because I've worked with a number of documents, I doubt I'd be able to go through any one of them, but I found only today in our municipal archives a file dating back 1966 where the question of paid parking and parking meters were discussed in the morality of Mayor Loku. I have it here, I can read it
I
to you,
have no doubt.
and I
In
can
fa-
show you. And
in
this
fact-
didn't went for public tender.
I know, but remember, I keep saying that this is the age of transparency and accountability, but also the age of the Procurement Act. But let's say, and I hope we get time to discuss some of the other issues, and I'll bring you in here again.
Chris, if I may. You've been told that the Procurement Act that governs the city does not require
Well, I think Mr.
Let me
King said
finish,
that.
Chris.
No, hold on.
No, I will
No,
finish what I... Chris,
Kit, please. Go on.
are you silencing?
No, but the
Well,
point
then
has already been made.
Let me finish. He gave you a straightforward answer.
So I am moving on. I'm moving on.
disappointed that you express a legal opinion. You're not a lawyer here, Chris.
Kit, I don't need you to tell me whether I'm a lawyer or not. I am a lawyer. I don't cease to be a lawyer. Anyway, Roshan, I was coming back to you on this issue. And I think this affects you as well, Mr. Oren. The bylaws are very clear. And this is not the city, these are bylaws. The laws are the country's laws. But I know what you mean. You're regulated by the laws and by the act and the bylaws. The bylaws are very clear that before, you could do what you wish, but it was up to the minister to decide whether or not he would approve the bylaws. The minister may approve with or without amendment or reject any bylaw submitted to him. So
Correct.
that's part of the city council's bylaws. Was it premature for you to go into this arrangement, for you to invest this level of capital expenditure without that guarantee that, look, this project and the bylaws which are necessary to give effect would be approved by the minister? Was that a risk was it a calculated risk you chose to take?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of risk in this business, right? But I should say that we had a visionary city council. I should say that they had bought into this vision from the early goings, and they bought into it. And one of the reasons we were convinced is because they bought into it not from just a financial perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course, they need the revenue, but they bought into it from the perspective of all the benefits that would come to the city and all the stakeholders. They really believed in terms of the mobility, in terms of the parking availability, in terms of the turnover. They had visited us and seen our operations in Mexico, and they had seen the results, both from empirically as well as from people and their opinions. And that's really what they bought into. Now, that wasn't enough to get us to do what we needed to do, right? That wasn't enough just because they said it. We didn't start installing way back in May when we signed the contract.
Mm-hmm.
What we did was we started our consultations. You mentioned consultations, so let's talk about consultations. We did a number of public consultations. We saw buy-in. We did a number of focus groups. We saw buy-in. We met with a number of businesses. We saw buy-in from these people, from these constituencies that we spoke to. All right? We held a number of public forums. We saw that a number of issues that are interestingly sprouting right now, we had addressed them and things were calm. What's interesting about what's happened in the past couple of weeks is there's this spontaneous, let's say, opposition that has sprouted.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, interestingly, it's only been 2 weeks, right? Tomorrow will be 2 weeks that we saw the first, let's say, opposition materialize. But we have launched by now, 5 weeks ago, right? And we hadn't seen any of it. So yes, when you ask me whether we were ready to take the risk, we were ready to take the risk because we saw buy-in from not just them, but from the people.
But
Okay?
okay, go on.
I'm just telling you. So you're right, and there is a risk, and I want people to appreciate. I mean, when all this talk and
Apart
I
from
hope
the
we
general
get it.
business risk,
I
I'm
hope
talking about the legal risk.
right. Absolutely, we have all sorts of risks.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? The risks that people kept bringing up and reporters kept bringing up is, what are you going to do when they vandalize, or what are you going to do when this? Yeah, these are all risks that we face. I want to, Mr. Ram, I want to emphasize, this is not something new. Yes, perhaps I haven't done this in 3,500 cities. I've done this in a number of cities before. But this very brand of meter that you have here today in Georgetown is the same that's in 3,500 cities worldwide, and it's one that addresses not just revenue generation, but mobility issues, which are very important to the prosperity and the development of cities. So therefore, we knew that this is something that would be very, very productive and very beneficial to this city, and we were convinced, based on all sorts of feedback, that it was the right move.
And
Roshan, I come back to you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make
sure.
a point. And while Smart City Solutions have the responsibility of bearing all the risk, the City Council was not required to make any investment, not 1 cent, in this project. But we have to get off the top 20% of the gross takings from this initiative. And this is important because some people talk about the 80-20 ratio or the 20-80 ratio without realizing that we have not invested any monies at all because we didn't have the wherewithal. I want to tell you, Keith, I want to tell you, Chris, that in
Kit is going to really get upset now.
in 1997,
No, I'm glad that it's flattering you.
in 1997, under the leadership of the late Robert Williams, Deputy Mayor, a team visited Miami and spoke with the Miami parking systems, discussed with them the possibility of having the Miami parking systems come to Georgetown and to install parking meters. They were willing. The challenge with that was that we were required to make a substantial investment in that project, in that initiative. We didn't have it. And so while the council was happy to do that, we couldn't go forward because we didn't have the wherewithal to invest, to make the requisite investment to have Miami parking systems come.
The preparation of the areas where the parking is, the parapets is on. Whose expenditure is that?
That is, right now, that is being borne partly by Smart City Solutions and by us.
So you share some of that cost.
So we share some of that cost, but we would have had to do that anyway.
I come back and then we'll move off of the bylaws because
If I may, just
Sure,
just
by all
one more thing. It wasn't also done blindly. Before the bylaws were passed, you had within the municipal within the bylaws that existed at the time, you had mention of parking meters and control of traffic within the city limits that were within the purview of the mayor and city council. That's before these specific bylaws were issued. That's another reason that we took, another reason that we're willing to go into the legal calculated risk, as you said.
Yeah,
So
Chris-
we didn't do it blindly, all right? We had a
Chris,
number of reasons.
I don't want to dominate the show because I know you
No,
do a
that-
very good job at managing.
Not at all.
But
That's-
I want to say that Amir is right, that the Municipal Act 2801 gave the council authority to establish at 272 and 273, 274, to establish and install parking meters and allied devices.
Yes.
So we have that. The bylaws, however, are for specific streets and for sanctions and other related matters. But we have in the law the authority and, in fact, I would say the responsibility to ensure that we have parking meters. Why? Because apart from the fact that we have other obligations, we are a regulatory body and have the responsibility to regulate traffic on our roads. So this is what we're doing. So even without this
I
this
have some
project,
doubts about some of what you're saying.
I can show
I'm
you-
not sure.
I can
I'm not
show
sure
you
you're the
it.
regulatory body, but you have to maintain.
no,
You
but
have
I-
a duty
but
to
Kate,
maintain the flow of
but
traffic.
if you permit me, I can read it
No,
to
no,
you.
that's fine.
I can read it to you from the Municipal Act. We are a regulatory body. When it comes to our roadways, council's roads, we have the responsibility and the right to regulate traffic. It is in the law.
All right, let me ask you about this, and then we'll get back to some of the other issues. They say no bylaw shall have the force of law until it has been approved with or without amendment thereof by the minister. Why is it, why did the company, why did the city council as the partner proceed to exact charges from persons when it was not in compliance with the law?
That didn't happen.
You've been selling cards, you've been charging for the use of parking
Not
spots.
as a matter of fact, we delayed the launch by a day until we had secured the signature of the minister.
But the law requires that they be published in the Gazette.
And they were.
And what date were they published?
They were published in the Gazette. I think I have it here. Let me just check it.
Sure,
Just wanna do-
because I think the public would be interested in knowing. One of the concerns it
Well,
had been.
I have a copy of the Gazette here, Chris.
Just give me the date.
It was published on Friday, the 3rd of February, 2017. But in the Gazette itself, there is a provision that says, and I wish to read it to you quickly. I don't wish to take notes. There is a provision that says, these bylaws may be cited as the Georgetown Metered Parking Bylaws
Yeah.
2017 and shall be deemed to have come into operation on the 23rd of January 2017. And this is what we
So
have here.
the minister, these are signed by the minister.
No, the bylaws are signed by the minister. They're
Yes.
approved by the minister, then they're gazetted.
So the minister backdated these bylaws.
Well,
No.
Well,
Minister
they
signed.
said they came on what day? What day it was
it
published?
is published.
On the February, and they said it came on from January.
Yeah, but it is
Well,
published. It's not a question of backdate. It's a question of when it was published and when the bylaws came into effect.
Well, no, it came with retroactive effect.
Show the
Well,
signature.
yes.
Because,
Show
no,
the signature of the
anyway,
minister.
But
the
within-
point I want to make is
But
this.
within the law, Chris.
The point I want to make is this. The government seems to be distancing itself from this arrangement. But a member of cabinet has signed and published. The Gazette is published by the Ministry of the Presidency.
Well, to that I will say, Chris, I cannot speak for the government here, but I'm not under that impression as a town clerk of the city of Georgetown, that the government is distancing itself from this project, but at the same time, I cannot speak for the government, but I'm not under that impression at all.
Well, the president himself came out and said, "Look, you have to reduce the rates." The attorney general said, "I don't know about things."
Well,
After they said,
the president coming out to say we have to reduce the rates is not the same as saying that he's distancing himself.
no, but on the way to reduce the rates, surely having published them in the bylaws, they have become law.
They have become law.
So the way to do it is to amend it. We need to, if he wanted, you would have to amend those. As a matter of fact, now that you've got the revision,
Maybe, Chris, you should sell your services to the president.
no, I don't need to serve myself. I don't need to earn any money, Kit. I'm okay. Thank you.
I'm glad to know you're
Can we
comfortable.
please not have these snide remarks? Does it mean
Well,
then?
you
Does
should-
it mean
You
then?
should
Does it
confine
mean
your
then,
questions
please?
To questions.
No, please.
Chris, I'm enjoying the program.
No. Well, why don't you?
Chris,
Now,
I'm
the
enjoying
point
the
I'm
program.
making, the point I'm making is this: should we then, or is it going to be necessary for an amendment to the bylaws, given the changes that you've just indicated, or the mayor announced yesterday?
I believe. All right, go ahead.
Do you
No,
want to?
no, you go ahead.
Okay. So I would say to you that if you've read the bylaws, and I think you've done quite a bit of homework, is the bylaws, the rates are in. The thing is that they're written in a certain way.
Yeah.
The rates themselves are in appendices, or I forget how they're called. They're in schedules, right? Towards the end.
Scheduled to the bylaws,
Right.
yes.
Now, schedules are ones that can be amended by order. Right, so it doesn't have to go through.
But it still has to be
I
published.
don't know
No,
about
it still has to be published.
Sure, certainly. So now, I want to say again, this is coming back to the very first question you asked us when we started the program, right? How'd you come from 500 to 200, and now we're reducing
Yeah.
it further? So even when we started with this, the mayor and city council had approved, based on consultations that we've had over the last 4 or 5 months with businesses, that there would be discounts to this official rate available to accommodate those people and those businesses which have people parking for 8 hours, which is something that will take time in the interest of mobility and in the interest of parking of space availability, which has all sorts of repercussions itself, but we can get into that in another question. All right? But we had discounts that were approved, and indeed, dozens of businesses have gotten the applications in order to apply for those. So this was all pre-contemplated, okay? And it was something that was signed off already quite a while ago by the mayor and city council to allow us to provide these amendments.
What I'm
To
trying
these discounts,
what I'm
rather.
trying to get at, Amir, is
Yes.
the amendments that were announced yesterday.
They weren't-
Are,
they
by the
weren't
mayor.
announced. They weren't
The ma-
officially
the ma-
announced. This is the mayor is taking consultations at the direction and at the suggestion, and together with our agreed position.
So that the announcement, Royston, maybe you can answer this. The announcement by the mayor yesterday, which was in banner headline in the Sabbath News, that's not part of an amendment to the bylaws.
The mayor made certain announcements yesterday, but those announcements must now be made official. Those announcements were made during the process of consultation with various stakeholders.
So,
And
are the bylaws going to be amended? That's just short answer. Given these announcements,
Perhaps, but we have to look and see how it will go. I wouldn't be able to say that at this point in time.
the city council had assured the public that due diligence was carried out by the council. Now, we had yesterday, over the past couple of days, a story about the antecedent of its director, Mr. Kamo Kosh. Was it an oversight by the city council in not checking properly the qualifications of Mr. Kush to enter into a partnership arrangement, because you've expressed it in terms of a partnership rather than just a straight contract? Was there an oversight? How come you missed that one?
When we entered into discussion with Mr. Kush and we signed on to the memorandum of understanding, we were not aware, and certainly we will have to check to see the time which we're talking about. But at that particular time, we checked and we were not aware there were any such events or incidents involving Mr. Kush. So I don't know if we're talking about after we would have signed or before. My own view is that it would have been after. But at the time when we had discussions with Mr. Kush and entered into that agreement with him, we were not aware that there were these issues.
Is he still a director of the company?
Perhaps I could help.
Sure.
A statement was issued this evening, just prior to this interview, in which the company has dismissed Mr. Kush as a director and has disassociated itself completely with Kush. And I have to tell you, Chris, that I would not have remained and you would not have seen me here tonight if that had not happened.
All right, well, that's positive. I'm not sure a company can dismiss directors. Directors are elected, and there's a process in law in terms of removing directors. Again, I'm not offering legal service, but I do know a little bit about appointment and firing. But what you're saying is that his association, he's still a shareholder. Is that correct?
Yes.
So he's a shareholder. Efforts have been made to dismiss him as a
No.
director.
He has been dismissed. I have seen the correspondence.
Well, the point I'm making, you don't dismiss a director unless he's an executive director, more in the form of an employee.
Well, the company must know, Chris, it's owned by its own laws, and the company has, and it is now in the public domain. We issued a press release today saying that Mr. Kush's behavior is disgraceful, unacceptable, odious, and they're not prepared to work with him. And they have, in fact, dismissed him.
All right. Tom Clark, schemes for parking meters go hand in hand with planning permission for buildings and for use of shops, etc. it seems clear that over the past years, and we've got some classic examples in Georgetown, recent construction, where or parking arrangements or permission that's been given to entities to build without any consideration for parking. Do you think that that problem, which appears to be within City Hall, has exacerbated this situation of parking in Georgetown?
Yes, I think so. And the question of zoning comes into play here. And when it comes to zoning, we have to talk to the processes that are managed by Central Housing and Planning Authority. That is the body that is responsible for zoning.
How do the two bodies, Central Housing and Planning and City Council, let's take a building in Rock Street, say, or any other place, a 5-story building, no parking facility. Who signs off on the approval?
The council is responsible for structural soundness and the architectural design of the buildings. Central Housing and Planning Authority is responsible for land use clearance. So in other words, if someone is applying to construct a building for commercial purposes, 3, 4, 5 stories, various dimensions, that plan would come to us first. Once we determine the structural soundness and the dimensions, we then forward that to Central Housing and Planning Authority.
So you have no say. You can't tell anybody, look, you have not made adequate arrangements for parking. We're not approving.
No,
None.
it goes to Central Housing and Planning Authority, and then they would say, and then it comes back to us, and based on their approval, we would either approve or not approve. We would either give or deny that person. The classic example, the one we had in Rob Street the other day, and one of the reasons given by Central Housing and Planning Authority was, of course, you had nowhere to park. You're putting up a 7-story building and you do not have on-site parking. However, quite recently, Council took a decision that there should be a policy at City Hall that if you are going above 3 stories, you must have on-site parking.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I think, Chris, you put your finger on the problem. The reason that we have the traffic chaos in this city is precisely because companies, large and small, have commandeered the city streets to park their employees for years, and now it's gotten completely out of hand. So private companies putting up their own security notices on the streets which they have no authority over have commandeered them and turned them into their own private parking garages.
On the other hand,
So that has led to a particular peculiarity of this city, and that is hundreds, if not thousands, of people drive to work every day and park through no fault of their own. And that is precisely why that needs to be addressed.
well,
And I will go on to say that I'm sure that Amir is ready to address it. That is why there's been one serious mistake in the assignment of the rates for the parking meters.
let me go back to the
And
said
I-
parking. Hold on,
just want to
we
finish that.
have only 9
Right,
minutes left.
I just want to finish that point. There clearly has to be, and the company has now started to take it into consideration, a rate that addresses that peculiarity.
But there's one of the concerns raised, and I want us to deal with this movement against parking meters. Your friends, Royster.
Yeah. And it's
It-
part
it-
of the democratic process. as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Is that the city council is actually discouraging persons from setting up parking facilities, that you have to get permission.
All over the world, Kit, if you're going to set up any
You still
facility,
get-
you have to get permission.
Are you telling
Chris.
me? Are you telling me, Royston? Because in Waterloo Street, we have decided an entire property that we've got at least 10 of our staff have cars. We had bought this piece of land to build and set up an additional building. But we,
Raman Craig.
Raman Mukherjee, sorry, yes, thanks, Kid. Now we've decided it would be unfair, unjust, inhumane to tell these people, look, you better find parking. So we've actually invested substantially. Am I breaking the law?
Invested substantially to do what?
Allow that area
For parking?
purely for parking by staff.
That's wonderful. We
No, but am I
that-
breaking
is
the
that
law?
private property?
It is private.
We have no problem with that. That's wonderful. It's actually exactly what people should be doing. Because when you do that, what you're actually doing is freeing up spaces on the road to allow people who want to come into the city to do business to come in and do business with minimum delay.
In fact,
So we're happy.
you've set an excellent example.
Yeah, we're happy about that. But of course, we now have a policy in place at City Hall, and I would encourage you, Chris, to check with us. You know, you can come into us anytime. We'll be happy to help you, but it is a really wonderful idea.
Thank you. Now let's talk about this movement against parking meters. As you said, I think tomorrow will be the third demonstration or protest.
You're well informed.
They've announced it. They've announced it. And I think Oren actually mentioned it just now. He slipped it out. You've said, Royston, that there's no question about that. That's part of the democratic process.
Absolutely.
But yet, the city council has been criticized for setting up a counter demonstration on the first occasion. It did not do it on the second, and that's quite commendable. Do you think they were wrong to set up a counter demonstration in which this kind of insulting remarks are traded?
It's part of the democratic process, kid.
The trading of insults?
No. But the fact that if you have a protest and another group wishes to protest, it's part of the democratic process. I don't know that City Council has set it up. I'm the town clerk of City Hall, and I don't know that we've set it up, that we've ever done such a thing. But all I can say is part of the democratic process.
No.
I think, Chris, it is fair to say, though, that whenever there is a protest, there's room for a counter-protest.
Absolutely.
If I may,
Sure.
I know we're running out of time. I was really looking forward, given your background, to hearing the 80-20 question. I really hope you're going to ask me about that.
No.
Because I want to be on this program and I want to be asked about that.
You can come back next week.
Oh, come on.
Now, this movement against parking meters.
That's one of the beefs.
What's your take, apart from the general comment about the democratic right? Their objective, as you're saying, look, we want this contract scrapped. It's unlawful. It lacks all the ingredients of propriety, and we are not prepared to live with it.
You're asking me?
Anybody?
Well, I think, if I may say so, they're entitled to their opinion.
So,
I would say that, again, they're entitled to their own opinion. They have not shown any evidence where the contract lacks propriety. They've not shown any evidence. That's the second thing. The third thing I would say to you, Chris, is that they have not come up with a reasonable
Alternative.
and practicable alternative to what we're doing, and we've said that. If you're coming against the parking meters, and it's really, with all respect to everyone, it's really, to my mind, a little bit of backward thinking that you should come against parking meters in the 21st century in a globalized world where Georgetown and Guyana is part of the global village, but you have not come with any alternative. I mean, what is the point? where is the alternative to what we're doing? We're submitting to the Guyanese public that parking meters are absolutely necessary in Georgetown to deal with the disorder and the chaos on our roads. We're saying that. We benefit from it financially, but it is absolutely necessary to bring order on our roads.
But
And you would have seen this, Chris, over the last few days when we had rolled out the program. You obviously saw what Georgetown looked like. It was really beautiful. You had space. You had no congestion.
I'm not sure that's good for that. You had too much space, though, for your
Yes, no,
business.
but I would tell you. Let me just, if I may, because I think we're running out of time. But yeah, you have too much space, but that's a pattern that we see. Like I said, this has been done in thousands of cities, and when you first roll it out, you have this knee-jerk reaction where traffic goes down for a little bit, but then the equilibrium goes up and it plateaus at a level that should be higher than when it first went down, but lower than when you started before the parking meters. Otherwise, if it goes back to where it was before, it just proves that you have underpriced the tariff. But if it stays very low, it's proof that you've overpriced the tariff, and that's a risk we take. But you asked a question, I want to answer it, okay? One thing that I would say is that this movement against parking meters, if they have the best interests of the people of Georgetown at heart, they say that they want such a system, okay? They want such a, even they, I don't know about they, I don't know that they speak with one voice, but many of them have expressed, and I've seen some of the letters that have poured in through the press, many people indeed say, this is something that is needed, and it's something that is good. So if you want it, and you have here an experienced operator who's brought forward something with international standards, with rates that perhaps they didn't realize, and perhaps they weren't privy to the negotiations we had with businesses, and perhaps that's one of the things we're correcting now because we're making it widely available. The same concept of discounts that we had for businesses that we've been discussing for 4 months, now we're about to make available directly through the meter and make it available to everyone at large. But what do they want? I mean, to say, hey, let's revoke it,
Well,
that's irresponsible.
Have you tried
It's
to engage?
irresponsible.
Have you invited them
Yes, I can
for
respond
discussions?
to that. I can respond to that. I've had direct contact with some of the persons who I know to be part of that group. Problem is, you're dealing with a very amorphous group. They don't have any real leadership. They don't have any real identity. But I have made personally contact with those I know and good friends, responsible people, and invited them to come in and sit down with us. They started to come. They said they were going to come, and then they changed their minds. So they refused to sit
So
down.
this has been done at an oral level so far.
Yes, I had that
Is
conversation.
there a case you think, and which might very well be because this is the first time people may be hearing that yes, the company through its representatives have made overtures to the other side. Is there a case for an open letter perhaps
Well,
to these persons to engage and say, look, let's have a
Chris,
negotiation, and here let me finish please. And here is a mediator who we prepared to live with, to have this kind of frank exchange. As in every mediation, you could say, no, I can't agree. But would that not take some of this sting out of what's taking place
I'm
now?
happy to take the sting. I want to say that we've been very busy with rolling this project out. So, perhaps you haven't seen us all over the media and jumping around from place to place and going on all the radio shows and all the talk shows because we're busy with performing under our contract. Now, however, having said that, getting buy-in again, because, everyone that says that we haven't had enough consultations, I can give you all kinds of examples that we have. And I can give you all kinds of examples. And case in point, we were 2 weeks into it before we saw any sort of organized resistance. So, yes, we're willing to talk. But if we're talking to someone, do they have any sort of governance? If you agree with one person, does that person speak for the organization? I mean, it doesn't mean we're not ready to speak with them. But we are ready to speak to them. But we're also ready to speak with other constituencies. And we have been speaking to them. We've been speaking to businesses. Look, the point is, at the end of the day, we are here to stay. We have a contract that's binding. It would be painful, and it would not be responsible, and it wouldn't be wise, and it wouldn't get anyone anywhere other than both sides suffering unless we move forward with it. And unless you say that, if you want to hold the position that our meters are used and 10 years old and we don't know what we're doing and we don't have experience, if that's the case, I rescind the contract right now. But it's not the case. So if you have I'm sorry, Royce.
No, so
If you have an experienced operator, okay, and they're here and they're flexible and they're willing to speak, and they can show to you that not only that, this thing is not new, this question of discounts and lowering the rates to account for people who park all day long. Even though it might be in the short term undermining some of the pretext for it, which is the interest of mobility and turnover and other benefits. But we're willing to work with the idiosyncrasies of this country to make sure, and this city, to make sure that over the long term it works. We're not here for a year, we're not here for a week. We're here to be here for our term, which is 20 years, by the way. It's not 98 years. It's 20 years. It's a contracted, it's been amended, it's official, it's 20 years. And actually, by standards of concessions, it's a short period, and I think you would know that as well. Just judging by your background, you would know that for a public-private partnership concession, where there's a private investor that invests all the money in a platform, 20 years by that standard is a short amount of time.
Chris,
And
let me give you a simple answer to your
Yeah.
question. The answer is yes. We're willing to sit down and talk with them, but they don't represent anyone that they can speak for. That is part of the problem. They don't represent anything more than an amorphous group. And if we sit down and talk with them, and the door remains open, it remains open. I've been told it remains open.
Well,
Who do they represent, and what can they guarantee?
It's a
well,
question of legitimacy.
movements are like that, kids. Movements are like that.
Indeed, they are.
This is not a company. This is not Smart City Solution Inc. This is a movement, and they have after the first.
Well, then the movement
first-
must have some degree of responsibility.
Well, but then the way you may be able to do it is to draw them out. Look, who are these people? And let's engage in a serious
so
discussion.
what would you
But
suggest?
Chris,
So
the
what
mayor-
would you suggest?
I think
Suggest-
it's implied.
The
That's what I'm
mayor
suggesting.
has issued a public invitation in the press to meet with this group and to talk with them. We're still waiting.
Whoever they nominate.
And that was in the media a few days ago.
But they have actually shut the door.
Well,
And you have to ask yourself why.
they go tomorrow, perhaps, and there is just a huge demonstration, protest, whatever it is.
And what is
How long does this continue?
What-
Every Thursday?
what-
This is not
I
good for
think
the
that's
city.
that's the question.
I'm glad you agree with that.
This is not good for anybody.
Let's
I think
figure
that's
it
the
out.
question,
Well-
Chris, that has to be addressed to them.
To whom?
The people who are operating in the streets.
No, I think it's both sides.
I'm ready.
No,
I think it's both sides.
we've
Chris,
answered you.
I
Chris.
wanna say one
We have
thing.
answered you very positively.
They are leading a protest. We are managing a city. They are leading a protest. We're managing a city. We have that obligation under the law, and we have that obligation to local communities and all the people of the city. So they are leading a protest. We are managing a city.
Managing a city, of course, requires compliance with the law, transparency, accountability.
Which
and all of that.
we believe is the case.
Well, that would be an issue for the city council.
but we have been transparent. We've always been transparent. We've discussed all of these things, including all of the amendments, at the level of our statutory meetings and special meetings, and with all of our stakeholders. People, for example, have been saying that the contract is a secret document. I would say the contract has never been a secret document. We've had this contract all the time available.
But you have
For
had
people-
your deputy mayor saying that he can't get a copy of the contract.
I don't know about that. He didn't ask me.
No. He
The
did
deputy
say
mayor
that
didn't
public.
ask me.
He did say it, but
But
is what he says gospel?
No.
Chris, you can have a look at the contract. I have it here. What we
it's
said to
been
them at
published.
council, what we said to the councillors, the honourable councillors, look, we have a contract. The contract is available in the office of the town clerk. The contract is available in the office of the mayor. You can visit. You can request the contract. You can sit. You can read it, you can write, you're not allowed to take photographs, you're not allowed to take away
In any
aspects.
event, now
Well,
they have
the
it.
reason why we did that, Kit, is, Chris, is because we took a deliberate decision that we will not share the contract because we've had bad experiences before, particularly with the lotto. You remember the lotto?
Yes.
The lotto
But
that
does
was
that
first
does not lead to
proposed-
suspicion? The fact that
Well,
you
how could it? And it's an open
no,
document.
you said that you couldn't get it. I mean,
You could.
It-
It
it's-
is available, but
how
Because of-
recently
it has
did
always been
become-
available. It has always been available. And we've always discussed these contracts. I have all the minutes here. If you had time, I would have shown you all the records of the minutes, Chris, where we shared the amendments and all the councillors participated in the discussions. I have it, I'm going to leave it with you. In the discussions, the amendments, the bylaws, the contracts, all of that. So everything was always available for all of our councillors.
At this stage, would it make sense to put that contract on the internet? I don't want to be treated.
Internet.
It
It's
is
on
on
the
the
internet.
internet.
You know,
It's
It's
yeah,
down,
on the
it's
it's
down.
on the internet.
How long ago has it been on the
I
internet?
think for about 2 days now.
2 days.
But to be honest, it was misappropriated. I don't know how it got out there, but it is out there.
And
It
they-
is, and they've been published. It's been published
The
all
most,
over
the current. How many versions
No,
of
there's
this
only
contract?
one- no, there's
So
one
no, hasn't there
contract.
been a revision?
No, there's an amendment.
Amendment.
the
yes,
amendment,
You know,
yes.
as you know, right? They're amended and restated agreements, or they're
Yes.
just amendments. So there's a
Yes.
contract and an amendment. All right. So at this point, the contract is out there.
No, but it's a good question you were asked. How many versions? There's only one version, the genuine version. But at least one major newspaper in this country has published the original unamended version and called it the real version.
Kit, you have managed to get the last word.
Thank you.
Mr. Amir Oren, Mr. John Daniels, you've been very quiet, but I know you were making notes and listening. Mr. Kit Nascimento, and the indefatigable town clerk, Mr. Royston King. Thank you very much for appearing on Play-Doh.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
This,
Thank you for having us.
this conversation can continue.
Thank you very much.
Please ask us to come again.
Likewise.
All right, sir.
Please, thank you.